Okay, everybody, and everybody who's just joining us for this very first lockdown live stream. I hope everyone's doing well, no matter what's going on with you, whether you're working from home, whether you're having to go out into an office space or whatever. Trying to do a lot more of this stuff due to the fact that many of you are staying home. I told the folks on Patreon, I said, how can I help you more? And here's some of the things that they said that they wanted. So here's what we're doing. I'm going to be recording 10 audio meditations by St. Francis de Sales. I'm going to be doing at least 2 live streams a week, just like this for y'all. So thank you to everybody who's showing up. Thank you, Matthew, Hillary, Connor, Catholic Shorts. All right, whatever you want to call yourself, Catholic Thinker, everyone else who's showing up, you're very welcome. I'll be taking your questions later on in the show. I'm also going to be recording all of Aquinas' prayers as separate audio files. And I'll get into this in a minute, I'll be uploading daily kind of audio chapters of a little funny, silly book I'm writing called Barry Baxter and the End of the World. So if you want to get access to all of that stuff, and if you want your questions answered first, go to patreon.com/MattFrad. Feel free to support me for $1 a month if you want, and you can get all those things. But anyway, hope everyone's doing really well. I'm doing well. I hope you can hear me okay. G'day, Tracy. Hello, Lewis. Hello, Nicholas. Hope everyone's doing pretty bloody good. As an introvert, I have to say that even though, of course, it's terrible what's happening to many people, I am very much enjoying this lockdown. It's been fun just spending time with my family. I've had about 5 or 6 different speaking engagements cancelled, unfortunately. So for those of you, golly, where were we supposed to be? In Ohio and Indianapolis and Austin, Texas. I was given several talks. I had to cancel all of them. I'm right there with you. Hello, Daily Fortnut. Yes, you're here for Metallica. Don't you worry. You won't be disappointed. All right. So here's what I'll do. I want to take a couple of our questions here. First from our patrons, just to say thanks to them because they're freaking awesome. And then I'll get to your questions as well. Sergio asks, any update on the potential Reuben Report interview? Yeah, I'm not sure how this happened, but about a few months ago, I guess Reuben's assistant reached out to me, I think, and said that Dave wanted to have me on the show. I said, I'd love to come on the show. She said, are you coming out to California anytime soon? I said, well, Whataburger's there. That's a good enough excuse. I'm happy to be there, And haven't heard from them since. And I think it's a cool thing for me just to not push. Not just cool in the sense that it's less annoying for Dave and his assistant, but I think just kind of entrusting whatever the Father wants, Like if I'm supposed to go on that show and talk to Dave, I'm very happy to, but I'm also not going to push it because, might not be the Lord's will. And if it is the Lord's will, he'll open up a spot for me to be on the Reuben Report, I suppose. So that's the update. Rachel Albenito says, any tips for working from home, how to stay productive and focused? So I have 4 kids. We homeschool anyway, so it's kind of the same. It's kind of actually really cool that we're kind of forcing the world to homeschool right now, I think. But that said, we've decided it's really important that we give ourselves a routine. Like we have to have structure in our day. Because obviously when you're going off to work, you're going to work out, you go to the store, you have a certain routine. And when you don't have that anymore, things can kind of just slide into a sort of sloppy, chaotic mess. You don't want that to happen. And so we have been kind of getting up at the same time. I've been doing morning prayer, night prayer with the kids. We've incorporated the Angelus at 12 o'clock and things like this. And, we're slowly, and we also are kind of like laying out the back in hammocks and reading books and just chilling a lot. But I think it's important to kind of stay productive in that sense, like giving yourself a schedule, top 3 things you need to get done that day, that sort of thing, I think can really help. All right, here we go. For those interested in Metallica, for those who know me somewhat well, I'm a pretty big Metallica fan. I was massive into them as a teenager. Haven't really listened to them in a while, but when I work out, I do. So Cameron says, best Metallica song, not called Enter Sandman. Also really struggling at the Exodus 90 thing here. Any tips or advice on how to finish strong? All right, so regarding Metallica, I think my all-time favorite song probably comes in as a tie. It's so hard to say. Let me just say two that come to mind because I haven't given this a great deal of thought. Orion from Master of Puppets, one of my all-time favorite songs, beautiful instrumental. If you're out there today and you're judging us who like Metallica, just stop clutching your pearls for a moment, just long enough to type in Orion, O-R-I-O-N, Master of Puppets, and give that song a listen. There's no lyrics, but it's absolutely gorgeous. I also like Hero of the Day. Hero of the Day is a beautiful song, especially on S&M. I really like that. So there you go. How to finish strong on Exodus 90? Well, look, good for you. It sounds like you've almost crossed the finish line. I just kind of get together with the brothers in your group and have a real conversation. Is this something you want to finish? Maybe we don't. And that's an option. Sometimes realizing that you don't have to do it is enough to make you realize that you want to do it. Or maybe that you don't. So I'd sit down with your brothers and kind of have a real honest conversation about that. Or, look, you got to be honest about your weakness. If you think, look, I'm about to cave and I don't give a stuff, you might sit down with your brothers and go, look, I'm about to crave and I don't give a stuff. So therefore, let's modify this somewhat, and so we can finish, if not strong in the sense of doing everything Exodus 90 requires, at least not totally crashing and burning the last week or two. And certainly it's been difficult given what's going on in the world. All right, let's see. Michael Masek says, can Roman Catholics receive the Eucharist at a Byzantine Catholic Mass? Yes, I'm a Roman Catholic, but I attend a Byzantine Catholic church, and I receive Holy Eucharist at Divine Liturgy. We'll get into coronavirus and missing Mass soon. John, and here, let's do it right now. John Stening, we must only receive the Eucharist in the hand due to the virus. I've seen some ministers at my church tell those trying to receive on the tongue, I have to give it on the hand, even when they're carrying a child. Don't we always have the right to receive on the tongue? I suppose we should be obedient to the bishops regardless, as best as we can. Yeah, okay, well, this is interesting and something I'm not really kind of qualified to talk on, but I'll share my opinion on it. I attend a Byzantine church, as I said, and we receive Holy Communion via the Eucharist, by a golden spoon. And so there's a sort of similar fear there. You've got this spoon, people open up their mouths and you put it in. And of course, the priest's intention is to place the Holy Eucharist in our mouths without it kind of touching our lips or our tongue. But that's not always going to happen, especially in the Byzantine church when you have little kids receiving Eucharist. And so there's a bit of a fear there. Look, my understanding is reception of Holy Communion on the hand is something that came about due to disobedience, right? That this wasn't something the church officially said we're going to now start receiving on the hand, okay? For that reason and for other reasons, I'm of the opinion that people should receive on the tongue. That said, since the Catholic Church permits the reception of Holy Communion on the hand, I'm okay with it. And I know that's going to upset some of you out there, but that's what I think. I think I've said this many times. Being a Catholic doesn't just mean accepting what the Holy Church teaches, Holy Catholic Church teaches. It also means not demanding uniformity if the church allows diversity of opinion or custom. So, for example, I have met some Catholics who look at me like a quasi-Catholic because I attend a Byzantine Catholic Church. Okay, that's their opinion, and I think it's wrong. And if they were to demand that I go to a Roman Mass in order to, say, fulfill my Sunday obligation, they're making a demand on me that the Catholic Church doesn't. So I don't think they should do that. Likewise, even though my understanding is that reception of Holy Communion on the hand began as an abuse, since it's now permitted and the church permits it, and I want to be faithful to the church, I'm okay with it in principle, even though I don't prefer it and would never have my kids receive on the hand because for other reasons. So I can understand it. I do think you have a right to receive on the tongue, but here's something Trent Horn said recently that I really liked regarding suspension of Holy Mass, because I know some people were getting pretty upset about this. I like what Trent Horn had to say. He said, suspending Mass because of a pandemic shows prudence, not faithlessness. Charity demands we not unwittingly infect others, and God gave us the intellect to discover how to stop diseases. I think that's a really good point. I know it's really in vogue right now to sort of rake the bishops over the coals for every little thing. And so I've been hearing people say things like, these bishops are a bunch of cowards. I disagree. I think it is prudent if we believe there is a legitimate threat, whether that's real or perceived, that that it is, as Trent said, prudent to suspend masses for the meantime. And of course, the Catechism of the Catholic Church makes it clear that in cases of, necessity, such as the rearing of children or being sick or some other reason, we're not bound to go to Holy Mass. That said, of course, I think you should want to. I want to. And so one of the things we do as a family here is we pray night prayer and morning prayer together. And so even though that's obviously not the same thing, and it would be much better if we could go to Holy Mass, I would say to the fathers out there who are listening to this that you could take this as an opportunity to embrace what it means for you to be the priest of your household, not in sacrificing or celebrating the Eucharist or anything like that, but in leading your family in morning prayer and night prayer, blessing your children when they go to bed and things like that. John says, second question, can you describe what a Byzantine liturgy is like for someone who's never attended? I would say it's constant chanting. We chant about 98% of the Divine Liturgy. There's not a lot of silence, which makes it easier if you have little children. And what else? There's no kneeling. Standing is the way we show reverence. There's a lot of kissing of icons. A lot of kissing. There's just a lot of kissing happening. So people kind of will go in, they'll bow 3 times, kiss the icon, and you'll see. Just go stand up the back and you'll love it. All right, let's see here. Justin McGee says, no question, could you just do a shout out for the Pints with Aquinas Dallas group? We have a Pints with Aquinas group, which you can find on Facebook at pwadallas-chapter@gmail.com. pwadallas-chapter@gmail.com. Hoping to resume meetings maybe in April. Okay, Ben Eastman says, how do you respond to Catholics who don't understand what NFP is and that it's not just Catholic birth control? If you don't have 6 hours to go into the theology of the body. Well, the problem with contraception is that it thwarts the sexual act, and natural family planning doesn't. So I might analogize it with food and say, what's the difference between dieting if I can just put my fingers down my throat and make myself vomit? The end results might be similar. I might lose weight. So basically, dieting is just like bulimia. I think that person would say to you, that's ridiculous. It's not at all like bulimia. Bulimia, they would say it's unhealthy, but you could also point out to them that it thwarts the end of eating, which is nutrition. And in a similar way, contraception thwarts one of the primary ends of the sexual act, namely an openness to life. And if you can understand why dieting isn't the same as natural family planning, dieting isn't the same as bulimia, because in dieting, you're merely abstaining from the food you could have, as opposed to engaging and then, purging. You should be able to understand how natural family planning, which abstains in the way dieting abstains, is different from contraception, which in a sense is a purging of the life-giving effects of sex. I don't know if that's a help, but I hope it is. Let's see here. Andrew says, since you recently spoke strongly, the reason I just said his first name is his last name's Polish, and I'm so afraid I'm not going to be able to understand it. So let's see if I can say it properly or pronounce it. Since you recently spoke strongly against having your kids play on a sports team due to hanging out with other kids whose devices are likely not locked down, what are your thoughts on the benefits of having kids play on a sports team? Which sports do you think are more appropriate for kids to participate in? All right. So I'm a big fan of physical activity. I'm a big fan of sports. I think it helps kids to learn how to play as a team, to work hard even when they're tired, to press on. If you want to win, you have to try harder. I think that's a good thing to instill in children. It also helps them meet other people and socialize and things like this. The reason I don't send my kids to sports is 2 main reasons. One, as you said, I don't want them hanging out with children who have phones and who are being exposed to pornography or all sorts of other vulgarities. This is not going to happen. I'm not going to allow that to happen. The second reason is I don't want, sports practices to interrupt family life. We have quite a laid-back way of living, my family. We hang out, as I just said. The kids right now, I can hear them screaming. They're out laying in hammocks. My son's memorizing a poem. My daughters, I don't know what they're doing. I think they're doing math or something, but they're all out there jumping on the trampoline, hanging out in hammocks. At nighttime, we like to sit around the fire and read Brother Grimm's fairy tales lately. We were reading The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells recently. Kids love it. We like to eat dinner as a family. These things, I think, often wouldn't happen if we had 2 practices or 1 practice a week, right? It would be interrupted. And so we don't want to do that. Now, our kids do play sports in this way. we have a group of Catholic homeschooling dads, God bless them, who got together and said, why don't we just, every Fridays at this park, we'll get together and let the kids play sports. And so that's what we do. There's about like 20 kids. They'll show up. The dads will divide them into two teams, the younger ones and the older ones, and they'll play flag football or they'll play basketball. And they just run around and they have a good time, and they're exhausted and they're sweaty and they're, all the beautiful things that I want from sports, the virtue of sports, without, I think, in my opinion, my estimation, the negative. All right. So those are the questions from my patrons. So thank you to you patrons. I want to take some questions now from all y'all awesome people in the live chat. Thank you so much for being here. And it's amazing to see some of your faces and recognize you as people I've interacted in the past. But before I do that, I want to say two things. I've been releasing these little geeky stories called Barry Baxter and the End of the World. These are stupid, hopefully funny little stories about this overweight comic book obsessed geek who discovers he has super powers after a squirrel bites him, and he can change things with his mind. And it's this fun fictional story. And what I've been doing is every morning I've been getting up early and writing it, and then I've been narrating it and uploading it to Patreon. You can go right now and listen to the first one, whether you're a patron or not. I hope you'll agree it's kind of fun. You're definitely not going there for like excellent writing or profound insights. It's not about that. I'm just trying to do my best to keep my patrons happy over this time when many of us are at home. So I'll put a link in the show notes, but otherwise go to patreon.com/MattFrad. You can listen to that and hopefully you'll enjoy it. All right, let's take some questions here from people here in the live chat. Matt Frad, please call all to join us in Italy and Vatican in praying the luminous mysteries of the Pope today. That's awesome, yeah. 9 p.m. Central European time, 4 p.m. Eastern. All right, so according to this person at 4 p.m., our Holy Father Pope Francis will be leading the world in a rosary. It's very beautiful, and so if you want to join him, you could do that. That would be very bloody beautiful. Hold to Tradition says, what prayer book do you use for evening and morning prayers? Where did you find the tones to chant with them? So I use a little Melkite Eastern prayer book. I believe it's called the Publican's Prayer Book. So you can check that out. It's a beautiful book. Obviously, if you're not Eastern Catholic, it might not interest you. I just posted night prayer to my Patreon account for my patrons. I'm about to tonight for my patrons. So if you're a patron, be sure to check that out. I recorded my whole family doing night prayer. Maybe it'll kind of inspire you to do something similar. Alex Nagel says, so Metallica. It's not really a question though, is it, Alex? So, but yes, Metallica, been a fan of Metallica ever since I was young. Connor Taylor says, what's your favorite race class for D&D? I'm a dwarf fighter kind of guy. Very cool. So I've only been playing D&D for a couple of months, and me and my mates only meet, every couple of weeks. So, once a month, I beg your pardon, not every couple of weeks. So I don't really know a great deal. I'm an elf druid. No, I'm not a druid. I'm an elf. I don't really know. I'm not geeky or cool enough to be able to tell you. I know I'm a half elf who's in search of his father. That's what I know. So I'm very much enjoying it. Michael V says, what made you become an Eastern Catholic? I've been attending an Eastern Catholic church for the last 4 years, mainly because many of the Novus Ordos were terrible, in my estimation, weren't very well celebrated. And I just was looking for a place of beauty and reverence and tradition. The Latin Mass was about an hour and 10 minutes away from our house, which was just too far for me and the family to go to at the time. So we started going here, fell in love, started reading a lot of books on Eastern Christianity and things like that. So that is why. James LaPlainte says, one thing I take comfort in is that our priests are still offering the Mass for the faithful right now. How would you recommend we unite with them spiritually? Well, I think one of the things, you could even ask your priest, are there particular petitions that we as a parish have? And then you could offer a Holy Rosary, say, or night prayer or morning prayer or something, and pray for those things. And maybe the pastor could find a way to let folks out, folks know about what's going on and what to pray for. Daniel says, is it possible that Hebrew laws on owning slaves and marriage in Book of Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers were not God-influenced? Is it possible that they were conflated, their opinions with the divine? So I think a good rule when reading the Old Testament especially is just because something is described, it doesn't mean it's prescribed. One example of this would be the practice of having many wives. This isn't something that God commanded, but it's something that he tolerated, permitted. And so you would have to look into each particular instance that you're looking at or you're thinking about and ask whether or not this is something that was prescribed by or commanded by God or not. Trent Horn is a great book. What's it called? Hard Questions, I think. It's on Bible difficulties. If you type in Trent Horn Bible difficulties, you'll find it. I'd recommend that book. Daniel Rocha says, for how long have you been an Eastern Catholic? Well, again, I'm a Roman Catholic who attends an Eastern Catholic church, and I might be doing the paperwork soon to make the switch, but I've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years, I think. So, yeah, there you go. Nathan says, what are my thoughts on Medjugorje? I've actually been to Medjugorje about 3 times. Oh, there we go. Someone's just pointed out Trent Horn's book is called Hard Sayings. Thank you for that, Matthew. You can check that out. Hard Sayings by Trent Horn. Yeah, I've been to Medjugorje a couple of times back in the day. Like this was well over 10 years ago when I lived in Ireland. At the time, I just kind of assumed that what was going on was true. Since that point, people who seem to know a lot more than me are saying it's not true, or if it was, it isn't anymore. My understanding is that the local ordinary has never given any sort of nod of validation towards it, and so for that reason, I don't know enough because I haven't looked into it. And I don't have the time to look into it, nor do I want to. But I'm of the opinion that it's probably not true. That's where I am at right now. Have you heard, says Michael Acker, of the Catholic psychiatrist Dr. Conrad Bars? Yes. Sorry, psychiatrist or yeah. If not, you could write his name down and look into him. The disorders he teaches about are very important but not accepted by the APA. Okay, interesting. Thank you. Jacob Sparks says, favorite church father and why? I love reading St. John Chrysostom. He's got a beautiful little work on marriage, which I would highly recommend. It's quite small. I love reading him. I love Justin Martyr. Yeah, Augustine. Those would be kind of 3 that come to mind that I like to read sometimes. The novice says, what to do when prayer feels dry and lifeless? I'd say that you should do the same thing that you would do as if you were married and your marriage felt dry and lifeless. Suppose that my marriage began to feel like that. And there's different times where you feel different amounts of intensity, but certainly that's not the point to back off. That's not the point to stop having date nights. That's not the point to stop, showing my wife my concern and love for her. And I think in a similar manner, if you're feeling that your prayer is a bit dry and lifeless, now's not the time to give up. I would say commit yourself to a prayer rule. I might talk about this in an upcoming lockdown live stream, but commit yourself to a prayer rule. Have a certain amount of prayers that you want to pray that day and be faithful to them, knowing that God is and will always be faithful to you. And, it's a sign of great virtue, I think, and perseverance if you continue to give time to the Lord, even when you yourself personally aren't getting anything out of it. Does that make sense? Daniel Rocha says, do you have any thoughts on St. Gregory of Palamas's energy essence distinction? Thanks for asking me that. I don't have any knowledge of that, although a million people have brought it up to me, and I know I need to look into it. So I'm currently in touch with a Dominican friar who wrote his doctoral work on this very distinction. He is of the opinion, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, but since I haven't said his name, I guess I can be wrong and it's okay. But I think he's of the opinion that there's more harmony than we think, but ultimately, if we want to push both Gregory and Thomas to their furthest extent, they are ultimately incompatible. I hope that's not true, but that's what he thinks, and I don't know enough about it. Ella says, what are some places you've always wanted to travel to? Russia. I love Dostoevsky and would just love to go to Russia and do a bit of a tour around the places where he wrote and lived. Do you have any poems committed to memory? And if so, could you recite one for us? Yeah, I don't really. Unfortunately, I had the sort of education where I was taught to kind of learn a bunch of things and spit them out. Was never kind of taught to memorize beautiful poetry. I know some Psalms by heart, like Psalm 23 or the King James Version. I think that's quite beautiful. I'm not going to recite it because I think it's a bit awkward for me to do, but yeah, there you are. Any recommended book read, says Matthew. I'm currently reading a book by Cormac McCarthy, Blood Meridian. It's very brutal, and not sure if I'd recommend it, but he's an excellent writer. I'm also reading a few works by Father Jacques Philippe, which I would highly recommend. All right. Let's see. Man, thank you. These questions are coming hard and fast. Hey, Matt, do you follow any of Jocko Wilkins' work? No, I don't know who that is. Sorry. Who is your favorite, least known saint? I'd say perhaps I'd say Saint Mary MacKillop in the West. She's often not really known. Just very briefly, Mary of Egypt was a prostitute, and she didn't actually prostitute herself out for money. She said that she just had a desire to lie in filth. So this isn't some poor helpless victim. This is somebody who had this, as she says, this desire to fornicate. She encounters the Lord in a powerful way and gives up her life of sin and becomes a great saint. Saint Mary of Egypt. So check that out. All right, my friends, I think that will do us. Thank you so very much for hanging out here. If you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor, subscribe and click that bell button. That way YouTube will be forced to let you know every time we put out a new video. We've got a few excellent interviews coming up soon. I hope you'll agree with them. Also, if you want to become a patron, that would really help me out. Even for $1 a month, you get a bunch of free stuff in return. One of the things you get if you give a little more is this beautiful Pints with Aquinas beer stein. Look there. Handmade in America. Bloody beautiful. One at a time. So patreon.com/MattFrad if you're interested. God bless you. See you later.